So tonight's speaker, as probably a lot of you know, is Misty Hart. I've had the pleasure of getting to know Misty better over the last couple months, and I'm really excited to have her here. She is bold, she is on fire, and her testimony is really powerful and timely for these times. And then, Misty, you can come on up. We're very happy to have you. And this is for you.
Thank
I want
you.
a good hug.
Everything's falling over already.
Would you like some water?
Maybe.
Okay.
Well, thank you for this.
Yes, you're very welcome. I'll give you this.
Oh, so I get this too?
You do. It's all yours.
Okay. Oh,
The floor is yours.
that's mine. Okay. Well, the worship was something, right? That really put us in a nice space for this evening, and I'm honored to be here. I grew up in Vermont. I've been here since I was about 5 years old. My family actually had me in Houston, Texas, so I get to say I'm from Texas. Not that I remember it too much. So I guess where am I starting tonight? Let me just take a deep breath here and ground myself. I can try, yeah. I can try to do that. I'm not used to this thing. Thanks, Lori. So I came from a family of 7, and my mother and father were in Texas. We moved to Massachusetts to be closer to my gram when my parents divorced. So that happened. My dad was not faithful to my mom, and it was with a woman from church. So I grew up with a very hypocritical concept of what church was. And in my family, in my house, we didn't go to church anymore. My dad had taught me about Jesus. He taught me the Lord's Prayer, and I always felt a connection to God growing up. Mom had different roots. We had Native American ceremonies, so a lot of shamanism, astrology, and Jesus. So it was a very confusing child raising with a plethora of criminality, substance use, domestic violence, and everything under the sun. We grew up in a lot of poverty. And in my mind, I always felt like that was not what I wanted, and that wasn't what I was going to do when I grew up. I really felt that. I really had a sense of my sisters, just seeing how they were and the fighting and everything really made me sick as a child. My stomach was very upset all the time. I was kind of in the moon, spaced out. The teachers would ask me to pay attention or stop talking. It was one or the other. I just had a lot of heartache. My mom did the best she could protecting me. My dad was a raging alcoholic, and he apparently was quite abusive to my siblings who are much older than me, but I didn't have that. My dad was very different to me. And my new stepdad was also an alcoholic, and he would drink, and we would leave the house. So that was my mom's way of protecting us, but my homework didn't get done. Things didn't get done. Moving forward, my teenage years, I followed in those footsteps. I guess knowing that I didn't have money to go to college and not thinking that I had a way out of my family, I was like, if you can't beat them, join them, I guess. I don't really know what happened. But I did start using substances I was 15 when I started smoking marijuana, started drinking, and then that turned into heavier substances, and I moved to Connecticut for a short period of time when I was about 17, 18. And that led me to inpatient treatment when I was 19. And that, to me, was my first experience with God. I was in inpatient treatment, and I was with a bunch of people that were way older than me. And they were like, why are you here? You're 19, you're just a baby, you know nothing. But I was happy that I was able to see that wasn't the life that I wanted. So I had a counselor who told me that I was never going to be as happy as I was when I was using drugs. And he said that's, because most addicts are addicts forever, right? And that's the mentality. Once an addict, always an addict. And I just don't, that's not my feeling. You don't classify yourself as that. So I said to him, I said, you've never, as a Spitfire that I was, I said, you don't know my life. You've not walked in my shoes, and I'm not really happy using drugs, the truth be told. And I went back to my room, and I just collapsed, and I was like, God, you got to get me out of this, like there's something better for me out here. And I called it an epiphany, I guess, because I didn't really know what was happening, but everything washed over me, and I just heard that I was going to be okay. And I was, I guess, for the most part. But I went the professional route because I wanted to be away from my family. Shortly after inpatient treatment, I found out I was pregnant. I was 21 when I gave birth to my daughter, Kirsten. And I decided that my life was not going to be like my family's, and I didn't spend a lot of time around my family. I had my mom and I had my sister Tammy, but the rest of my family was still very much in alcohol, poverty, violence, and it made me nervous. Every time I'm around it, even today, my stomach just doesn't feel good. I don't want to be around something like that. So I learned about ACEs and how adverse childhood experiences set you up for certain things, and how your body keeps the score for your mentality of everything that you've experienced. And when I say my stepfather was a raging alcoholic, there were many nights that I had to call the police, and he would be ranting at me as I was on the phone with the police, calling me every name in the book, and that goes somewhere. So the way I always explain it to someone is, if you see a lemon and you think about a lemon and you can see the color and the skin of a lemon, and you cut it and you smell it, your mouth starts salivating, right? We can start getting that picture of a lemon, and every thought that you've had, negative or positive, goes somewhere in your body. So that led me on a quest to be professional. I was fancy, I just drank wine. So the the glass of wine here and there was, my new kind of poison. And I had my children. I got married when I was 25. I had 2 more sons, and everything from the outside looked pretty good. Things were good. We had the 2.5 kids, the white picket fence, the nice 3,000 square foot home, vacations in the summer, pool. But I couldn't feel whole, like something was missing in my life. And I filled it up with everything that I could, gardening and herbs and books and Reiki and all the spirituality. At first I was walking down the road of paganism because that spoke to me, like as a girl who was a hippie and grounded and living in this very godless community. That's what I kind of flocked to. I did not know that Vermont was the least godliest state in the Union, but apparently it is, and now I understand why I had some of the experiences that I did. So during my marriage, I was married for 18 years, and that's what I was chasing. I couldn't feel good in my marriage, and I couldn't feel happy with my children. Something was missing. I know I was doing the right things, and I was kind of going through the motions, but all of it just felt detached, I guess, like not really happy. And I read a book called Happiness is a Trap, and that made a lot of sense to me, because we have to find joy in the negative experiences, and there's not really any good or bad, it just is, right? So I was doing those things, and I was going to counseling, and then in 2014, my daughter came to me at 15 years old and said she had a positive pregnancy test. And I was beyond myself. Like, I had separated her from this, my older sister had a child at 15, and when I was 21, I felt like that was young enough, and I knew what she was going to go through, like this wasn't going to be easy. And I even contemplated, I was like, should we take her to the clinic? Should we take her to an adoption agency? Like, I knew she wasn't going to do any of that. She's my daughter, and I went through the same feelings, right? I was like, this is my responsibility, and I'm going to own it. And so she did, and I started drinking more. And I knew it was a slippery slope. I knew all the things, right? I had been there before, and I knew that 1 glass of wine could lead to 2 glasses of wine and 4 or 5 on the weekend. And it wasn't long before my husband and I started turning against each other. He didn't want her to stay in our home, and I wanted her to stay in our home and go to school and all the things. And we had a lot of conflict about that. And she did end up moving out. Her boyfriend came from Alberta because we had moved to Alberta, and then moved back. That was another piece, maybe for another day. And she had another child. And during this time, my mom got terminal cancer. She was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and my mom was my best friend. She was just the one person in my family who was trying to break that cycle, and that one person that I could talk to and just never judge me. It's your mom. And during this time, I put myself in my bachelor's program with Miss Amy here, and I kind of just had blinders on. But during that time that my mom was sick, she was diagnosed in May of 2018, and my daughter started using substances, and I just blocked everything out. I would drink, I would do homework, I would go to school, and I didn't have the capacity for anybody but my mom, really. I spent some time with her, and I'm very, very grateful to this day that her sickness, it was a 2-year fight, and that's not common with pancreatic cancer. Sometimes it takes you really fast, so I'm very lucky that I had that time. But she was diagnosed in May of 2018, and my favorite aunt and her sister, her closest sister, died 2 months later. That November, I lost my brother-in-law. The next January, I lost my sister. My sister died of alcoholism at 53, and then my brother overdosed. And my life was compartmentalized, for sure. I was the one in the family that knew how to do all the things. By this time, I was working for the state. I got a job as a DCF investigator, of all things. And I was trying to put myself in my job and try to figure out what's going on in my family, and none of it was working. And I ended up getting a divorce in 2019 and moving back to in Derby Line in a little house. So I had my little house. I felt like I had the job of my dreams, like my success and my master's degree was there. I had the dream job. I felt like I had everything that I wanted as a child, and then I looked around and I had nothing. My marriage was gone, my kids were gone, and then COVID hit. COVID hit, and my kids were really gone. I didn't see them for 12 weeks. So I had never spent more than a night away from them before COVID, before I got a divorce. So the week on and a week off was hard enough, and then it was weeks. It was weeks of me being alone in my house, and then I would drink, and then shame, and then guilt, and the cycle would repeat. And the kicker was that my mom was buried across the street from my new little house. So every time I backed up into my driveway, I shined my lights on my mom's headstone. And it was like a constant reminder that I didn't realize I was going to have, and I don't think that helped the drinking. And then this was all in 2020. So 2020 was just incredible. After losing all my 2 siblings and my mom, and then my marriage, moving, the kids, I actually got put on leave at work for something that I didn't do, but I had no idea what it was. So 3 months I spent on administrative leave, I guess is what they call it. And I was just broken, just completely broken. I started going to a different therapy, which was EMDR therapy. And I don't know if everyone knows that, but it's like connects your left and your right brain. And I really call it the psychedelic of therapy because it works really quickly. There were things that I was carrying that I had no idea about. The spirit of rejection, but rejection in my body. My dad would often not pick me up on the weekend when he was supposed to. My mom would get my bags ready, and I just felt like I wasn't loved, as a child. But as an adult, I can see my mom was really happy to have a free weekend and that my dad had his own issues. So after doing those things, I slowly started healing, and I realized that the drinking, you know, one glass of wine a night was too much, because I might have been thinking about it at like 3. And I was like, oh, I'll have a glass of wine with dinner, you know, and I knew it was a problem. So knowing the ACEs and the body keeps the score stuff and all of the things that I knew that a community was kind of necessary to have that be something that was going to help me get through this. So I joined the Facebook group. It was Dry January Facebook group. And I was like, oh, I probably lied to people more than I did about being okay. But, you know, I was having some dreams about drinking. I was a little irritable. And 3 weeks in, my body broke. And as a master's level clinician, as someone who knows about the body keeps the score and all the ACEs and all of the things, I hadn't realized how much I had kept in my body, you know? And when I say my body broke, I woke up with significant pain in my stomach, and I don't know where it was coming. I thought, I didn't know what was happening. I felt like when my appendix burst when I was a little kid, but I knew I didn't have that anymore. So there was, what else is broken in there? I don't know. And I went to the hospital, and they gave me 6 shots of narcotics and 4 shots of anti-nausea medicine, and sent me home vomiting, still in pain at 7 o'clock in the morning, and they couldn't tell me what was wrong with me. They had blown 10 veins trying to get an IV in. I mean, it was really, really bad. And so I still wasn't drinking. You know, it was 3 weeks into not Dry January, so I was like, well, maybe it was I don't know, maybe it was from that. But when I say when I was drinking excessively for me, it wasn't excessively maybe for other people, but I knew it was a problem. You know what I mean? I had been down that road too many times and seen my family with it. So I took this as a sign of having to really do some digging about what I was holding in my body and wasn't letting go of. So I fasted for 4 or 5 days, had a bunch of tests, still nothing. And then I just started meditating more, being very introverted. I was hiking a lot. I think I hiked 33 trails by April. And I had just tried to just process in the best way that I knew how, but no one had ever talked to me about Jesus. You know, I kind of prayed, I kind of meditated, and it was midsummer. I think it was about July, it was July last year, and I was laying down meditating, and this voice came over me that said that my heart needed to be rewired. And I had absolutely no idea what that meant or where that came from, but I felt like this electromagnetic pulse, right? Like I was like, it just felt weird. And after that day, I had this peace just wash over me. Like I can't explain it. And for most people, I'm like, I don't know how to talk about this. But it was just this peace. I didn't have road rage anymore. I didn't want to drive fast in my car. I had no desire to go out dancing and spending any time with anyone drinking. And I was just really just kind of coming into myself. And it was during that time, shortly after, that I realized that my daughter had relapsed. And the generational trauma that I thought I was breaking wasn't broken at all. I hadn't made any impact in any of that generational trauma. I didn't teach my children about God. They did go to Bible camp, which is weird, every summer. Went to Bible camp, and they actually have a religious class in Canada. So in school, they have a religious class that they have to take every year. So they had something, but they didn't have anything from me in that capacity, and I didn't really talk to them about, like, you know, paganism or star seeds or any of that stuff either. It was just, you know, they were just kind of like figuring it out on their own, kind of like I had, right? So the generational trauma was there, and at this point, it was maybe 3 months had gone by, and I hadn't even heard from my daughter. And at this point, I had met my now husband, and we had been talking about a lot of things, like I would talk about something that I felt like was really powerful from Buddhism or my New Age background, and it was all in the Bible. And this was all blowing my mind, like law of attraction stuff, all of it is like kind of hijacked from the Bible. And I didn't realize that it was like everything that all the base, all the good was taken and twisted just a little bit, right? And so the more I read, the more I realized that I didn't know anything about this man, Jesus, right? Who I thought was this really kind human, kind of like Buddhism, but I had no idea about any of this. And we were sitting on my couch one night, and he said to me, how would you feel if you didn't have a connection with God? And I was like, well, that would be terrible. I would never want to feel not having a connection with God. And he said, well, then just say, thank you, Jesus. And just this epiphany, like this wash happened over me. Like I was like, are you trying to tell me that my connection, Jesus died so that I can have a connection with God? And he's like, that's exactly what I'm trying to tell you. And I'm like, oh my goodness, right? Like, and I didn't share with him how hard it hit me. But after he left, I went into a total meltdown surrender. And I got on my knees and I just bawled and bawled and bawled. And I said, God, I can't do this. I don't know how to do this. It's not my way is working. It's been 20-something years, and my kids haven't, there was a little better, but it was just minimal, right? And I think my mom tried to make that impact because she wasn't a heavy drinker. She tried to protect me the best she could, and I think that her starting that process, and letting me know about Jesus and talking to me the way that she did started that. So I'm very grateful for that roadmap that she had given me. But then something happened that is unexplainable, right? And if you don't experience it, you can't know, right? So God showed me everything I'd ever done wrong as a mother all at once. It was like I was dying. And then he showed me every beautiful moment that I ever had with my children. And then he showed me every beautiful moment that I had with my mother. And all of the times that he was there. He was there when I had the operation when I was in second grade. And he was there when I was hearing the fighting. And he was there when I went to inpatient treatment. And I had a really hard time accepting this patriarchal person because I didn't have a father that I could bond with. So how can I have a God that's a man? And I was just really confused. And I'm like, I have a father in heaven who loves me and wants a relationship with me. And that to me was really hard to believe. And it's not anymore, because once you have the Holy Spirit and that flooding happens, it's not something that you can go back. Like it just happens. And now I feel so much peace for the first time in my life. I have no anxiety. I am so grateful to be able to be up here and share this story with you all, because, there were many times that I thought I would die. And that night in the hospital, even after everything that I'd been through, he was there all through my drug addiction. He was there all through the alcoholism in my family and all through the scary moments. And that night in the hospital was the first night that I'd ever felt like I had so much pain that I couldn't take it and I wanted it to be gone. And I was like, if I have to die, I guess I have to die, because I can't go with this pain anymore. And I think that was probably the turning point that it finally hit me. So, when I explain it to people about what God does in your life, it's like God is here and he's holding his hand down for every single one of us, because we're all chosen, and it's up to us to reach out for it, and so it's really funny, because not funny because everything's crazy with God and he's so good, but since I was 15, I've had this little plaque that I found, and I carried it around. And I don't know why I carried it around, because I'm a purger, and I really do. I clean things out all the time. Like I throw all the things away. And as someone who was a self-proclaimed light seeker, I found the light in Jesus. He is the light, he is the way, he is the truth, right? And so I have the John 8:12, I am the light of the world. He who follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. And I had that little plaque, and I had it tucked in my pictures, and I had that since I was 15. So it was just, I wanted to bring that because it was so powerful when I finally realized how many places he had been in my life. And today, when I was thinking about coming here, I kind of asked for a verse, and Colossians 2. If I said that wrong, I'm sorry. It's really, really hard to pronounce some of these things in this book. So that's not something I'm ever going to get used to. So I found the Colossians 2. I want you to know how much I have agonized for you and for the church and for many other believers who have never met me personally. I want them to be encouraged and knit together by strong ties of love. I want them to have complete confidence that they understand God's mysterious plan, which is Christ himself. In him lie hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. I am telling you this so no one will deceive you with well-crafted arguments. For though I am far away from you, my heart is with you, and I rejoice that you are living as you should and that your faith in Christ is strong. And so all of those feelings of who do you think you are and how are you getting up here, and all the shame is gone. That person is completely dead. I have zero shame for any of the things that have happened before October 2nd of last year. So if you have anything on me, I don't really care. So those are the things that he's done now, because I'm a child of God, a daughter of grace, and I have a father who loves me. And that's my story.
Misty also does a lot with the Harvest Barn that we've heard a lot about. And if you want to share about that upcoming event or anything you want to share about that, I think people would love to hear it as well.
So the next event is on May 18th at 5 p.m., and we're going to have it at the theater again, not at the worship barn. One more time at the theater, and then we're planning some outdoor events and some other things coming up. June 8th, we're trying to do a family day and invite as many people as we can to that, just to be together in fellowship. And the next event has Jeremy Raboyne and Haley Shillifo. I murdered that word too. So both of them will be there, and there will be testimony shared and worship and fellowship. So we'd love to have as many of you as possible.